Football and money, money and football. The two is inextricably linked as pies and Bovril. Well, they are, if you're at the top of the game, which Manchester City certainly is. Fresh from winning their fourth Premier League title in a row, the club has launched legal action against, wait for it, the Premier League. If I were to tell you that it's all about money, well, that would be somewhat less surprising than Scotland winning the Euros. And it might not be a complete coincidence that the Premier League are currently looking into 115 accusations of financial irregularities at Manchester City. I'm Niall Paterson, and on this edition of the Sky News Daily, we'll ask what on earth one of the richest clubs in the world is up to, and whether the beautiful game is in need of a facelift. Paul Kelso is our business correspondent, and he joins us once again on the podcast. Good to see you, Paul. I suppose this is one of those stories that's straight up your alley, given the fact you also used to be our sports correspondent. And in a sense, this is a story about the worlds of business, of sport, combining in a big unholy mess. Just explain, at the core of all of this, what are Man City doing in terms of legal action with the Premier League?
Yeah, you're quite right. It's a collision of the modern world of sport and business, which are, frankly, they're indistinguishable, certainly when you get to the very elite level where Manchester City operate beyond question. And what they are doing is something that is unprecedented in the history of the Premier League. They are directly challenging, suing the Premier League, which means suing their 19 rivals and colleagues who sit round the Premier League board table over some regulations which were introduced 3 years ago to limit something called associated party transactions. That is, in layman's terms, regulating any marketing or commercial deals with companies that are owned by the same person or entity as the club. It also regulates transfers between clubs in the same ownership group. City have got 12 different clubs on 6 continents in the City Football Group. And those deals, those related party transactions, have to be established to be at a fair market value. Now, the aim of these rules is, bluntly, to prevent owners juicing up their commercial income by funneling money from companies they also own directly into the football club.
This is all awfully complicated. So let me just try and put an example out there and see if I'm understanding this. Fair market value. Let's take one of the sponsorship deals that all the big clubs have, the naming of their stadium. And let's say in a certain part of the country, that would be worth, say, £20 million a year. What these rules are designed to do is to stop the owner's company or associated company saying, do you know what, rather than paying the fair market rate of £20 million, here's £2 billion for that sponsorship deal. I'm in the ballpark, or the football ground, I should say.
Exactly that. And it is essentially owners, almost by definition, are very rich and with big assets to deploy, being able to bypass the normal commercial market. And what it means is if you are another club not owned by an enormous entity, when you go to the market, you're dealing with a normal range of potential backers, airlines, soft drinks companies, betting companies, whatever it might be. There's a market rate for whatever the deal is, be it a stadium rights or shirt sponsorship deal. These rules are there to prevent those being blown out, inflated, and giving the club an advantage. And there are some pretty specific examples of associated party transactions at Manchester City. 4 of their 10 biggest sponsors are Abu Dhabi based entities. Remember, the club is owned by Sheikh Mansour, a senior member of the ruling Abu Dhabi royal family. The stadium is the Etihad Stadium. The shirt sponsor is Etihad. And they will have had to demonstrate that those deals have been done at a fair market rate. They're not the only ones. Saudi Arabian state-backed investment fund bought Newcastle United. There's a company they own on the front of their shirts. Indeed, Chelsea's new owners have a deal with a company in which they also have stakes. So there are plenty of examples of these.
Look, when it comes to the money, and again, sorry to labour this point because this is quite a confusing topic, companies which are not related to the owner of a club would not want to pay more for the sponsorship deal, the shirt sponsorship, the stadium sponsorship, or anything else because, they're beholden to their shareholders. I mean, isn't that the argument that Man City and others are saying, that the Premier League is discriminating against Gulf ownership, that they are the victim of the tyranny of the majority in all of this?
They've claimed actually all along, we should be fair to City, they have always maintained since the Sheikh Mansour, since their ownership group came in a little over a decade ago, that the rules around finances did discriminate against new entrants wanting to, at speed, compete with established powers in football. By the time they came along, Roman Abramovich had already been loaning money to Chelsea for a good period of time. Manchester United have decades of success to build their commercial might. And they've always felt these rules were discriminatory. Now, having established themselves at the top of the game, they appear to be wanting to kick away the ladder altogether to everyone else and being able to flex their financial might in a way that was fundamental to the Premier League, and speaking that in the corporate terms, the overarching entity beyond the individual clubs, could fundamentally affect the competitive balance, which is, after all, what the enormous commercial success of this league is based on. Teams are more likely to get beaten in the Premier League than they are in any other league in the world. And that is one of the reasons that it's the most watched and often the most watchable football league in world football.
I mean, do Man City have any supporters amongst their colleagues around the Premier League exec table? I mean, I'm thinking of other clubs in the Premier League in a similar position with owners with pockets deeper than the centre of the earth.
One would imagine Newcastle United's owners, they're owned by the Public Investment Fund, ultimately of Saudi Arabia. We would imagine they will be watching, perhaps with their fingers crossed, to see how this goes. It's a really interesting insight, actually, into the way Premier League ownership has changed and what is the point of owning a football club. Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, one imagines their reasons, they're not in it to make money. They're in it for the profile that it brings. These clubs have such a global profile now that they are hugely valuable in terms of the leverage they can bring, the soft power of the Premier League that they can bring to state-owned entities. You can trace it around the Premier League table. The influx of two, for now, state-backed entities into the Premier League could, we can see from this City action, absolutely change the very delicate balance of power and competitive vitality of the game in England.
Competitive. That's a word I just want to dwell on for a second, because at the heart of Man City's complaint is that these rules, the associated party transaction rules, are uncompetitive. And they say this with straight face, having won the Premier League for the fourth time in a row. It doesn't strike me that if there was going to be a change in the rules, that it should be made in their favour. It should probably be made in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and until now, not just in the 32 years of the Premier League, but the 140 nearly years of professional league football in England, no club has won the top division 4 times in a row. This is the first time it's happened. That's not quite evidence, I would say, of a hegemony yet.
Like, so it's not like Rangers and Celtic, is it?
It's not Rangers and Celtic yet, or Barcelona and Real Madrid, or Bayern Munich. You know, they won by 2 points. Arsenal this year, Liverpool pushed them close last year. They might point out Man United won 7 of the first 10 Premier Leagues, but it has never been unchallenged dominance, but it's starting to feel like it. And if you take the financial shackles off and allow City to earn what they want and spend what they want, and remember, football used to be a romantic game, but ultimately the more wages you pay, the better you will be. It is a metric of success in football that does not lie, the size of your wage bill. It is a very meritocratic business and game. If you take what handbrakes there are off, the fear is, with a brilliant manager, with a network around the world of clubs, English football starts to look boring. And that is the deadliest thing you can do to the television product.
But we certainly shouldn't forget the fact that whilst this arbitration process begins next Monday and will run for 2 weeks, we're told, that there is another legal process ongoing involving Man City due for November, where they face, 115 separate accusations of financial irregularities. Now, I've seen it suggested, and I want your view on this, that there are perhaps some underhand tactics going on, that the Premier League, unlike Man City, does not have bottomless pockets, that the legal bills that are racking up on both sides are going to be astronomical. And in fact, in doing what they are doing right now, Man City are somewhat distracting from the 115 financial irregularities that they will have to defend come November. I mean, what do you make of that?
You're absolutely right. There are many who think that City's success, every trophy should be accompanied by an asterisk in the record books because of these charges that hang over them. 115 charges, most of them regarding alleged breaches of financial regulations, many of them relating to the alleged, and they remain allegations, disguising of revenues and sponsorship deals, effectively doing what the rules we've been talking about are designed to prevent, juicing up your income without properly declaring it. We can't speak precisely to their motives, but you can see how this action, irrespective of what it is in its own right, how it might assist City. If you can establish that some Premier League regulations are unlawful under English law, then you may be able to undermine the regulations under which you are being prosecuted. You might also be taking up yet more time of the Premier League legal department. Remember, the Premier League legal department ultimately works for Manchester City as well as the 19 others and is funded from the revenue that they generate. Times reporting today that legal department budget has quadrupled to £20 million dealing with the City case. And it's also highly, highly aggressive. However we wish to style it, it is a front foot bit of legalese to take on your 19 other co-shareholders in this way. And it demonstrates that City are very serious about defending those other regulations and frankly want to shape the game to their ends. They may well be within their rights to do that.
Paul, take a breather there. When we come back, we will be discussing, the broader concerns about money in the beautiful game. Stay where you are. Welcome back to The Daily. Paul Kelso, our business correspondent, still with us. And look, I suppose we have to make mention, Paul, of the fact that the game from when I was born, X years ago, to where the game is now has changed beyond all recognition, frankly. Money is at the heart of it. Sky has played a role in that, hasn't it?
It absolutely has. The Premier League, remember, was founded in 1992, a breakaway of clubs with some pretty high-profile people involved. Alan Sugar, then plain Alan, was one of them. They put together this breakaway from the Football League to found their own competition, cut the league down to 20 clubs, and crucially, market it better and sell a big chunk of live rights to hundreds of games to Sky exclusively, which was at the time launching its satellite television service in the UK and proved a huge success. And the success of the two, for quite a long time, were intertwined. But the game in England is transformed. You think of the state just emerging from a ban from European football, the blight of hooliganism, stadiums that were having to be upgraded following Hillsborough. If you supported an English football club, you didn't necessarily talk about it much in public. It was a world away from the mass entertainment, safe, expensive, globally watched competition it is now. Sky played a role in it, 100%.
Sometimes when you look at what the professional bodies say, the big clubs say about maintaining the grassroots of the game, it sticks in my throat.
We have this contrast between a game that is still felt very deeply in communities. These are community institutions, most of these clubs, and this global business. And there are issues that are incredibly hard to defend. The loss of replays in the FA Cup, that is simply a function of an expanding calendar. And the big clubs want to play more and will from next year be playing more Champions League games. than ever before. They want to play more of the lucrative competitions, and the organisers of those competitions want them to play them, than they want to be going to Burton Albion on a Tuesday night, despite the fact the visit of Manchester United to Burton might secure that club's future for a year or more. Much of the game is still hand to mouth. I would argue it is still richer, and the value of these clubs is perhaps more widely appreciated than it was when I first started going to watch football. But it is nevertheless, the inequalities are vast and unbridgeable.
I suppose for many people, particularly those who support clubs closer to the grassroots level, it's the fairy tale quality to the game that keeps people going week after week, month after month, year after year, to stand in the rain and watch their local team. But the other club that is springing to mind right now is, of course, Wrexham, who through their celebrity associations have had a big influx of cash, have gone up twice, I think. Even Wrexham fans cannot deny that the reason, or a big part of the reason they are where they are right now, is because of the money, isn't it?
Absolutely. The guy who was scoring the goals when they were in the National League was from the league above, and they were paying second division wages in the National League, and they were able to do it because they had the celebrity interest and the celebrity money. It's a great story. It's a decent documentary too. One of the things I've actually found most reassuring, that the spirit of English football isn't broken, even if perhaps the model, you could argue, is in need of repair, is that the reaction now to Wrexham among football fans, and I would argue perhaps the correct football fan reaction once we got over the delights of the documentary, is for them to be loathed by other teams and I mean that in the nicest possible way, in the fashion that the richest clubs always have been. I mean, who beyond Manchester United fans has not enjoyed their decade of struggles after 20 years of untrammelled success? That's the way it works.
No comment.
To enjoy English football, it is required not just to enjoy the success of your club, but you have to revel in the failure of others. And the financial disparities give those who enjoy the game the opportunity to revel in it. But there's a serious point in there. It is truly meritocratic, and ultimately the best players get the most money, end up playing for the teams that can afford to pay them. And the teams with the most good players tend to win.
A final question, Paul. How many keepy-uppies can you do? I'm up to 3.
About 30.
All right, okay, fair enough. And on that bombshell, Paul Kelso, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Come on, you Spurs.
Hail, hail. Forget the jumpers for goalposts romanticisation of the game of football. It is far more a business than a game, and always has been. Yet, in recent years, the gap between the top and bottom has become ever more pronounced. And this legal action by Man City, with 4 league titles on the trot, let's not forget, will, if successful, make it even more difficult for the minnows of the game to play keepy-uppy with the big boys. That's a lot for this edition of The Daily. We'll see you soon.